It was my graduation dinner, and 30 pairs of eyes watched as my father burned my diploma. He held the lighter with steady hands, brought the flickering flame to the corner of the paper, and declared, "You don't deserve your grandfather's money." On the pristine white tablecloth, the diploma curled into black ash. A gasp swept through the room. Someone dropped a fork. And my mother, she didn't even flinch. But here's the thing. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just smiled, stood up, and walked out. They didn't know, they couldn't have known, that burning that diploma changed absolutely nothing. And by the next week, they'd find out just how badly they'd miscalculated. My name is Reese Rothwell. And this is the story of how my family tried to take everything from me, and how I took my life back. From a young age, I learned to stay quiet. Not because I was shy or didn't have opinions, but because silence was how you survived in our family. My parents, Conrad and Caroline, adored the idea of the perfect family, the kind you see on Christmas cards, the kind everyone envies. And my younger sister Amelia was their masterpiece. Golden hair, effortless smile, a creative soul, or at least, that's how they presented her to the world. She was the daughter they dressed up, bragged about, and orbited around. I was the other one. The practical daughter. The quiet one. The one they forgot to introduce at parties until someone asked, "Don't you have another daughter?" I learned my place early. At 11, I dragged my robot project across the school gym alone because Dad was driving Amelia to some art workshop. At 15, I took the night bus to a science program while my parents flew with Amelia to Portland for a fashion conference. At 17, when I won the state scholarship, I scanned the auditorium for familiar faces. They weren't there. But in the back row, as always, stood Grandpa Rothwell. Hands in his pockets, smiling at me like I'd done something extraordinary. To him, I had. Grandpa was the only one who truly saw me. He understood how my mind worked and knew I didn't need anyone's permission to matter. He taught me things my parents never cared to: how to read a contract, how to replace a motherboard, how to stand my ground without raising my voice. Silence is a strategy, not surrender, he told me once. Maybe that's why I never argued when Mom dismissed my accomplishments with an absent nod or when Dad insisted Amelia's future would always be brighter. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need their approval. But that wasn't entirely true. There were nights in my dorm room, staring at the ceiling, wondering, what does it feel like to have your parents proud of you? Just once, not for being trouble-free, but for who you're becoming, for what you've achieved completely on your own. I thought graduation night would be that moment. I imagined my father shaking my hand, my mother hugging me for photos, Amelia teasing me the way sisters do when no one's watching. I wanted just one evening where we felt like a family. Instead, we sat in an expensive restaurant with warm lighting and polished silverware, and I could feel the familiar estrangement thickening between us like fog. Every question about my new software engineering job carried an edge, as if they were waiting for me to admit I'd just gotten lucky and didn't deserve it. Amelia spoke about her plans in such vague, grandiose terms: new art studios, travels, future opportunities that somehow always circled back to our parents' wallets. I tried to suppress the unease creeping up my spine. This was my graduation, just one night. I just wanted to preserve some memory that felt like family. But people show you who they truly are when they think they own you completely. And that night, my parents showed me everything. The tension didn't build all at once. It gathered slowly, like storm clouds behind polite small talk. I noticed it in the way my father kept glancing at his watch, how my mother's smile grew tighter with every congratulation aimed at me, how Amelia leaned back in her chair with the air of someone who already knew how this night would end. I tried to stay present, answering questions about work, keeping my tone light, sipping water to steady myself, but something deep inside felt wrong. As if the three of them had rehearsed this scene before even entering the restaurant. It started when dessert arrived. My father cleared his throat, a sharp sound demanding attention. He pulled a brown folder from his leather briefcase and slid it across the table to me. "Rise," he said. "This is important." My mother crossed her arms. Amelia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, smiling like she already knew the punchline to a joke I hadn't even heard yet. I opened the folder slightly. Financial statements, property deeds, something notarized. My heart lurched and went still. I knew exactly what this was. My father didn't mince words. He never does. "Your grandfather trusted you," he said. "You already have a stable job. Amelia is just starting out. Sign the transfer papers so she can manage the inheritance. That's what family does, family." Funny how that word only surfaced when they wanted something from me. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not signing anything." Silence fell over the table. Amelia blinked, genuinely surprised I'd said no out loud. My mother's lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. My father leaned forward as if he hadn't heard. "Rise," he said, slower this time. "Don't make this difficult. It's for the family." I repeated, "No." For all my 24 years, it was the first time I'd told them no, and I didn't apologize. My father's face changed. Confusion first, then irritation, then something darker. "You don't understand what's at stake," he said. But I did. For the first time in my life, I understood everything with absolute clarity. When Amelia snorted quietly, something inside me snapped. "Oh, come on, Reese," she whispered. "You weren't even close to Grandpa. Why would he leave you anything worthwhile?" My throat went dry, not from tears, but from sudden, piercing clarity. They'd never seen me as anything more than a convenient placeholder, a source of comfort, silent compliance, whatever they needed at any given moment. I leaned back in my chair, breathing evenly. I wouldn't sign. Then my father stood, pulled my diploma from his briefcase, and flicked open his lighter. His eyes locked onto mine, challenging, cruel. He still believed he could break me. "You don't deserve your grandfather's money," he said. The blue flame touched the corner of the paper. The entire room gasped as it curled into black ash. But something inside me shifted. Quietly. Irrevocably. I didn't break, I woke up. The fire was supposed to frighten me, destroy me, knock me off balance. That was my father's calculation. Instead, as my diploma turned to ash, something inside me stilled. Guests murmured, silverware clinked. Someone reached for their phone. Amelia's smile faltered, confusion flickered across her face. My mother sat motionless, just watching me. Waiting for me to crack so she could call it an overreaction. But I didn't crack. I watched the ashes settle on the white tablecloth and felt light. Years of neglect, dismissal, of being treated like an inconvenience, all crystallized into one clear truth. There was nothing left here worth holding on to. My father almost looked disappointed I wasn't crying. "This is what happens when you forget who supports you," he said. Funny. I couldn't recall a single time they'd ever truly supported me. Slowly, I stood, smoothing my dress. "Are you finished?" I asked. He blinked, startled by my calm. Amelia reached out as if to grab my wrist. "Reese, don't make a scene." I stepped back before she could touch me. Her hand hung suspended. Finally, my mother spoke. Her voice was low and cold. "If you walk out now, you'll tear this family apart." The irony almost made me laugh. They'd torn this family apart long before I'd learned to write my name. I picked up my purse, neatly placed my napkin on the table, and met each of their gazes in turn. "I'm not tearing anything apart," I said. "I'm just done pretending this is a family." A ripple of gasps traveled down the table, but I wasn't performing for an audience. I didn't put my pain on display. I simply stopped being that little girl they could humiliate. I turned and walked out of the restaurant. My heels clicked softly against the tile. No one followed me. They were too stunned, too proud, or both. Outside, the night air wrapped around me, cool, damp, sobering. The faint scent of rain lingered in the air. Cars passed by in a steady rhythm. For the first time all evening, I could breathe. I called a cab, slid into the back seat and stared at my reflection in the window. My eyes weren't red, my hands weren't shaking. I looked like someone who had finally stopped begging for love that was never meant for her. Aunt Ruby's apartment in Hillcrest welcomed me with warm, dim light. She'd left the door unlocked. A mug sat on the table, next to the kettle and a few chamomile tea bags. No questions, no pity. Just space. Lying on her couch that night, I replayed everything that had happened, not with anger, but with clarity. Their cruelty wasn't sudden, it was rehearsed, expected. And yet, I hadn't broken. I'd smiled. I'd walked away because deep down, I knew something they didn't. Their performance that night wasn't the end of the story. It was their final mistake, the one that would make the truth impossible to hide. And next week, in the lawyer's office, they'd learn just how wrong they'd been about me. The morning after the dinner, sunlight seeped through Aunt Ruby's curtains, soft and warm, as if unaware my entire life had turned upside down overnight. I expected to wake up shaken, angry, maybe even heartbroken. Instead, I felt an unfamiliar calm, steady, firm, clear. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. The first messages were from Amelia. Short, smug, dripping with superiority. Thanks for the room, sis. I'm repainting it blush pink. You don't mind, do you? You never liked this house anyway. Oh, and maybe try being supportive for once. I watched the screen until the words blurred, not from tears, but clarity. She truly believed the house was already hers. Then came my father's 3-page letter. Beneath layers of accusations, ungrateful, selfish, never satisfied, was one single message: give up the inheritance. Fix the mess you've made. Be the daughter we want you to be. I closed the letter without finishing it. Finally, my mother called. Not to apologize, not to ask if I was safe. She went straight to strategy, as if dinner had been a negotiation that had gone slightly off script. Your father didn't mean it, she said, her voice cracking. You know how he gets when he's stressed. Just sign, sweetie. It's not worth tearing the family apart. But it was already broken. I just stopped pretending the cracks were part of the decor. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't remind her they'd burned the most important thing I'd ever earned. I just hung up, then turned off my phone entirely, because only one conversation mattered now. I opened my laptop and wrote a short email to Mr. Sterling. My grandfather's attorney. It's time. He replied within minutes. Next week. Santa Monica office. All parties will be notified. I set the laptop aside, leaned back against Aunt Ruby's couch, and exhaled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting, I was choosing. The week passed quietly. A strange contrast to the storm brewing beneath the surface. At work, I buried myself in code and project planning, losing myself in the one part of my life that still made sense. Evenings, I stayed with Aunt Ruby, drinking tea, helping with small chores, watching old movies. She didn't push me to talk, she just sat beside me. A silent anchor in a tilting world. Your grandfather saw this coming. She told me one evening. He didn't trust you for nothing, I nodded, though the weight of that trust sat heavy in my chest. When the day finally came, I arrived in Santa Monica early. The sky was cloudless, bright, almost mocking. I parked outside the law firm, smoothed my blazer, and walked in. The lobby smelled of polished wood and citrus-scented cleaner. Mr. Sterling met me with a solemn nod. They're on their way. Are you ready? I've been ready for years, I said. We walked into the conference room together. Long table, tall windows, leather chairs too stiff to be comfortable. At the center lay a neatly stacked pile of documents. The weight of an entire legacy. Sealed in crisp white pages. 5 minutes later, the door opened. My father walked in first, jaw clenched, sharp with outrage. My mother followed, her face set like she was bracing for public humiliation. Amelia drifted in last, phone in hand, sunglasses perched on her head as if she were headed to brunch, not a legal proceeding. When she saw me, she froze. Seriously? She muttered. You actually think this changes anything? I didn't answer. They sat across from me. A perfect divide. A perfect metaphor. Mr. Sterling began without ceremony. Per the official last will and testament of Mr. Rothwell. The room went still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. He read line by line, dates, signatures, witness statements, then the part they never saw coming. The entirety of the estate, including all properties, investments, and business holdings, is to be transferred solely to his granddaughter, Reese Rothwell. My mother's lips parted. Amelia's jaw dropped. My father leaned forward. That's impossible, he barked. He promised. No, Mr. Sterling cut in calmly. I never promised. Amelia slammed her palm on the table. I already put down a deposit for the studio. You can't, I looked at her directly, unblinking. That's not your money. She shook her head. Her voice began to crack. You don't even like this house. You don't care about Grandpa's company. You were never around. I was the one who showed up for the photos. I cut her off. My voice was quiet but firm. And I spent every summer there, learning the business, understanding what he built. While you were busy flaunting pretty pictures, I was listening. Her face flushed. She opened her mouth, then shut it. Father made another attempt, pouring into his voice all the authority he'd wielded my entire life. You're too young to handle this. You'll ruin everything. Amelia is spoiled, I said softly, but it cut sharper than any shout. And you made her that way. The silence that followed was thick, awkward. Damning. Then Mr. Sterling pressed a button on the remote. The screen lit up with a video. Grandpa sat in his office, frail but with a gaze still sharp. If you're watching this, he began, then Reese kept her promise to stay silent until the truth could speak for itself. Mom covered her mouth. Dad froze, staring at the screen. Amelia whispered, no. Grandpa continued, I watched you dismiss her accomplishments. Watched you lift one child up while ignoring the other. I watched Reese grow strong because you never even tried to see her. The room pulsed with tension. No one breathed. Conrad. Caroline, he said, staring straight into the camera. You failed her as parents. But she succeeded anyway, not because of you, but in spite of you. And I'm leaving it all to her because strength should be trusted, not exploited. Because loyalty should be rewarded, not taken for granted. He paused. His voice softened. Reese, if you're watching this, know that I see you. I always have. And I'm proud of the woman you've become. The video ended. Silence rushed in like a tide. I felt something crack in my chest, but it wasn't destruction. It was release. Like I'd been holding my breath for 24 years and finally exhaled. I stood, bracing my hands lightly on the table. This wasn't revenge, I said. It was justice. Then I pointed to the contracts. My choice. For me. Dad's face twisted, not with remorse, but with the realization that control was slipping through his fingers. Mom looked down, tears glistening on her lashes, but I could tell she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for what she'd lost. Amelia buried her face in her hands, shaking her head as her future rewrote itself in real time. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "You're right," I said. "It isn't. It wasn't fair when I carried my projects alone. It wasn't fair when you got everything and I got silence. But justice isn't something you're owed. Justice is something you earn." I gathered the documents Mr. Sterling had handed me, placed them in my folder, and stepped away from the desk. "You burned my diploma," I said to my father, "but you didn't burn my future. You never had that power. You just convinced me you did." No one uttered a word, no one dared. I walked out of the office into the bright California sun, and for the first time in my life, its light felt genuinely warm. 3 months had passed. Near had changed, quieter, lighter, mine. I'd moved into a small apartment on the southern edge of San Jose, close enough to walk to the city's tech hub every morning. The apartment was modest, but for the first time, I felt safe there in a way I never had as a child. On my desk sat a single framed photo. My grandfather and me in the backyard. Both of us laughing at something only the two of us remembered. Work had shifted, too. I'd taken a leadership role in the company, restructuring it from the inside out. No politics, no nepotism, just competence. People seemed to breathe easier. Employees who once looked worn down now met my gaze with quiet determination. One of them, an older engineer named Arthur, stopped me in the hallway one day. "You know," he said, "your grandfather talked about you often. How clever you were. How well you listened. We all wondered when you'd come back." "I'm not going anywhere now," I replied. And it was true. I heard nothing more from my family. No calls, no letters, not even a message from Amelia, who used to go an hour without talking. And strangely, I didn't miss them. Instead, I felt a stillness, steady, honest, earned. At night, I'd stand on the balcony and watch the city lights flicker like distant stars. For the first time, my mind was quiet. I wasn't replaying what I'd done wrong or what I needed to fix. I wasn't shrinking to make others comfortable. I'd finally stepped into a life where I didn't need permission just to be. Sometimes, I still think about that night, the flames, the silence, how I walked away without looking back. But now, standing on my balcony under the gentle San Jose breeze, I understand what my grandfather had been trying to teach me all along. Strength isn't about loud words. It's about choosing yourself, even when no one's clapping. My family lost control the moment I stopped needing their approval. And the inheritance? It was never just money or property. It was proof that someone had seen me as I was, that I mattered, that I was enough. That was the real gift my grandfather left me. Not wealth, but the knowledge of my own worth.